Hello, and welcome to the third part in a series on assessment. This time we're going to be focused on reliability, validity, and bias of our assessment items. We will also deal with that in the context of some examples. So specifically, if we want to understand the types of assessment items and using them, we have to make sure that the assessment items are doing the job that they're intended to do. So the three key measures we're going to be using to check the performance of our items are reliability, validity, and bias. Reliability will be addressed first. This is a measure of the consistency of an item. When students see this assessment item, do they consistently perform on it if they have a consistent level of understanding of the intended learner outcome? Effectively, does it measure the same thing every time it's used? Validity tells you whether or not it's actually measuring the skill it's intended to measure. So, for example, if you have a multiple choice question in math that says algebraically solve this problem, but the problem can be solved with technology, well, in multiple choice, you don't necessarily mark the student's work. So you don't know that they're using algebra. They might be using the technology instead. Right? You might ask them to algebraically find the roots of a quadratic equation, but that's something that can also be determined by graphing if those roots are integers or if they are fractions with low denominators, or the rational numbers with low denominators. This is why the math problems in which you look at another student's work and find the error are popular. It requires the algebraic understanding rather than the technology in most cases. Bias is one that's the hardest to check for. So this will tell us whether or not a student's opportunity to respond correctly is influenced by factors outside of the classroom. One example is that a deck of cards, if we just mention deck of cards, in North America, we assume that that's going to be 52 cards with suits of hearts, clubs, diamonds, and spades. But if you're coming from Spain or Italy, you might expect a 40 or 48 card deck with suits of swords, cups, coins, and batons. That's very different. I've also had issues where the top performing student in the class had only been in Canada for about 18 months, and she had come from a culture where names are not gender specific. She struggled with a deductive reasoning item on one of the math tests because she did not know it was safe to assume someone named Charles was male. So let's look at some concrete examples to help understand these. Imagine that your course has the following learning outcome. Students will be able to correctly cite publication issues corresponding to significant fictional events in Silver Age comic books. So how can we build a good assessment item for this particular outcome? So if we look at the following, Peter Parker was also known as Hulk, Batman, Superman, or Spider-Man. Is this item reliable, valid, and without bias? Well, in fact, it's no on all three. We'll get to that. So there are multiple reasons why this is a terrible item. So if we look specifically at the learning outcome, students will be able to correctly cite publication issues corresponding to significant fictional events in Silver Age comic books. The intended learning outcome specifies comic books, but Spider-Man has appeared in so much media that people who've never read a comic book in their lives can tell you that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. It also specifically calls out Silver Age comic books. That's an era of comics that ran from the 50s to the 70s. There's some disagreement on where that era starts and ends, but there's no question that you could pick up a comic published today as your first comic book and also learn the answer to this question. It also does not specifically refer to events in the fictional history that are referenced here, so it's not valid in that regard either. This version is an improvement. Dr. Octopus first appeared in, well, that would refer to a specific historical event in the fictional universe that was published in the Silver Age. And if your options are Amazing Spider-Man 3, Archie number 4, Batman number 7, and Dr. Octopus first appeared in drag, well, that's not very reliable either. The stem is good, but as a fill-in-the-blank it would work. As multiple choice, it's not, because the distractors are not effectively distracting. So the movies and comic books, or the movies and TV adaptations, will clearly tell most people that Dr. Octopus is associated with Spider-Man. So you don't need to know this specific era of comics to say he's probably not going to appear for the first time in a Batman comic or in an Archie comic, and he's certainly not going to appear the first time in drag. So we do not have effective distractors here. It's way too easy for someone who is not familiar with the content to select the correct answer. So this version is more effective. Dr. Octopus first appeared in, and now we have 5 different issues of Amazing Spider-Man to pick from. So the part that would have been obvious last time is that it was an issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Now that we have 5 to pick from, we have only a 20% chance of answering correctly, and we are specifically referring to historical events within that fictional universe. So again, we're on the right track. We can make it even better by turning it into a numeric response and just saying Dr. Octopus first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man issue, and then we leave that blank so that students fill in the number on their own. The numeric response still makes it easy to machine score, but now the odds of guessing correctly have been reduced from 20%, because now you just have to know the number. For the same reason, history teachers should consider doing numeric response items when students have to provide a date or a year. It's effectively a machine scoreable fill-in-the-blank. The item still shows bias, though. In the United Kingdom market, comics came out weekly, not monthly. They often adapted the US comics as anthology titles. So they would take a 24-page story as it was published in North America and break it into 6 or 8-page chapters to be spread out over 3 or 4 issues in the UK. So as a result, the issue numbers do not line up. So we would be better off specifying that, yes, we are looking for the first appearance of Dr. Octopus in the original North American market. That will help us avoid the issues where UK readers might find him appearing for the first time in a book that's not even titled Amazing Spider-Man, because you might have characters from multiple titles being put in under one cover. So our next lessons, we will expand on the Norman Criterion's reference measures that we alluded to last time. And then after that, parts 6 through 9, we'll deal with a lot more data analysis on the assessment items themselves. Again, thank you for taking the time to listen to these lessons.